Secretary Emergency Committee of Rojava in the US, writer and journalist Debbie Bookchin. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. The United States government has recently issued bounties for 3 leaders of the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK. Why do you think they took this action, first of all?
You know, this is a question we've been actually trying to figure out, because really it's a holdover from an action that was taken by the Trump administration. And the Biden administration has, unlike Trump, reaffirmed a strong commitment to human rights around the world. Now, the Biden administration is clearly deeply ambivalent about Turkey. On the one hand, they're quite aware that Turkey is really slipping into totalitarianism, as we see from the many arrests of students and teachers, professors, journalists, and of course the thousands of members of the HDP. So, you know, it makes no sense really for them to have renewed these bounties that Trump first placed on the leaders, of the 3 leaders of the PKK. What we are trying to figure out is, you know, whether the United States is throwing a bone to Turkey because of its forceful statement, the one that Biden made on the Armenian genocide, whether this is a kind of a holdover. But whatever the reason, it's absolutely wrong. It's the wrong move for right now. More than ever, the United States should be playing a role of pressing Turkey into negotiations with the Kurdish people.
In your view, why does the US still list the PKK as a terrorist organization, even given a decision such as the ruling from the Brussels, as you know, High Court, that the PKK is not a terrorist organization?
And not only Brussels, but also other organizations. For example, the Bertrand Russell's People's Tribunal recently also well, a couple of years ago already now, mentioned and ruled after a long hearing that the PKK is really an armed civil conflict and not a terrorist organization. And there are other organizations that feel the same way, and other countries that have made that same determination. So, you know, this ruling, this idea goes against the history. I mean, we know that in 1995, for example, the PKK renounced any kind of armed civil conflict except in self-defense. And that has really been the policy. For some reason, the United States and the EU refuse to acknowledge that the PKK's work in trying to assure Kurdish autonomy has shifted over the years, and that it is not engaging, except when pressed into self-defense, in armed civil conflict. And so we see this move as very much antithetical to achieving a peace in the region. And that should really be the goal, is stability for the entire region. And we can't have stability for the region until Turkey achieves some kind of negotiated peace with its Kurdish population.
Thank you. At the same time, the US maintains a relationship with the SDF in North and East Syria. How would you characterize the relationship of the US with the Kurdish movement in general?
You know, there's a real conflict, as I'm sure most of your listeners are aware. On the one hand, the military branch of the United States understands that our Kurdish allies have been instrumental, critical in the defeat of ISIS, and have paid for that with the sacrifice of blood to the tune of 11,000 people, including 9,000 Kurds who have given their lives as part of the SDF in the fight against ISIS. And I think, you know, you can see that the military was very upset when Trump decided to withdraw US troops. On the other side, you have the State Department that tends to look at the region in geopolitical terms. And that means that they're constantly weighing, in a very instrumental way, the value of the Kurds as against their bigger efforts to, deal with Russia, and they're clearly afraid of pressing Turkey too hard and perhaps pushing Turkey into the arms of Russia, and the other issues with Iran. And so it's really an unfortunate conflict. What I will say is that I think that the Biden administration's policy on Syria does not yet seem to be fully determined. And I think that that makes it more important than ever for people in the United States and also European supporters of the Kurdish autonomy movement to press their leaders and to push for a peaceful settlement, to push for a place for the Kurdish people at the negotiating table on the future of Syria and other measures like that.
You are working now as a member of the steering committee of the emergency committee for Rojava. Can you tell us a bit more about the committee, such as why it was formed and the work that you do?
Yes, thank you for letting me talk about the ECR. We are very proud of the work that we've been doing. Many of us had been working really to support Rojava and its incredible model of non-sectarianism and multicultural pluralism and women's rights in particular for many years. Even before we formed the Emergency Committee for Rojava in 2018, we were really formed right because of the invasion by Turkey of Afrin. But our work goes beyond, obviously, our concern, deep, profound concern about what has happened in Afrin. We are trying to press the United States government for a peaceful solution to the Kurdish issue, because we believe that the magnificent experiment, the magnificent project that is Rojava, is not only a model for the Middle East, but is also really a model for the whole world because of its incredible ability to bring people together and to empower people at the local level. So our demands to the US government are that the government start pressing Turkey for a negotiated peace, that we stop sending weapons to Turkey until such time as, really, we shouldn't be sending weapons to Turkey at all, but that certainly weapons that are used to oppress the Kurdish people, our allies in the fight against ISIS, is outrageous. And of course that happens not only from the US, but also from European countries. And that we really want to see the Kurdish people have a seat at the negotiating table for the future of Syria.
Over the past months, Turkey's attacks against the HDP have continued to escalate. Only recently, on the 26th of April, as you know, the trial of 108 HDP members, including the former co-chairs of the party, has just begun. What do you think these attacks and this trial in particular indicate about the state of democracy and the rule of law in Turkey? Very short, very briefly.
Well, the state of democracy, there is no democracy in Turkey anymore. And the fact that Demirtas has now been in prison for 4 years is simply an outrage. And the entire United States and the entire world really should be condemning this in much stronger terms and should be pressing Turkey. Turkey is clearly threatened by the democracy right across the border in Rojava. It was deeply threatened, as you know, by the terrible actions it took in Bakur, by the democratic confederalist model, which is a model that is more democratic than anything we've seen anywhere else in the world. And people who claim to care about human rights and to care about democracy should be speaking out much more boldly and pressing their leaders in the United States and all over the world to end this totalitarian, authoritarian, and highly repressive activity undertaken by Erdogan in Turkey.
Secretary Emergency Committee of the Rojava in the US, writer and journalist Debbie Bookchin. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for your valuable comments today.
Quel espace.
Thank you.